I'm Jo Elvin, and today I am joined by my favourite two Royal Richards, Messrs Kay, the Daily Mail's senior editor-at-large, and Mr Eden, the paper's diary editor. Welcome to you both. Now, before we start the show, I have something really quite shocking to share with you. Would you believe that over half of our regular viewers are not subscribed to the Daily Mail Royals channel? It's true. Honestly, I'm not making this up. Are you one of those people? If you are, please do make sure to double check the subscription button below, and while you're down there, sign up to the Palace Confidential newsletter, or alternatively, you can sign up by scanning the QR code on your screen now. It's free, just like subscribing, and we'll keep you up to date with our latest, most exclusive content. Speaking of exclusive content, earlier this week we put out a special episode of Reading the Royals, where Richard Eden here looked at all similarities between Meghan Markle and Wallis Simpson. That will play straight after this video, and you will see that some of them really are rather spooky. Before that though, we have so much to discuss today, so let's get to our panel, and we will start with a big royal stink. And why not? This week, the Mail on Sunday exclusively revealed that King Charles has submitted plans for a pit which will hold 2 million gallons of liquid manure in Sandringham. But there's one royal resident that might be affected in particular. Richard Eden, are you hungry now?
I should stress it's organic manure because it's for the king.
Love starting talking about poo, but so, who might be needing to shut their windows?
Imagine what it's like. It's, so it's huge. It's a whole reservoir full of fresh organic manure, so quite smelly, particularly in the summer when people have their windows open. And the local villagers are up in arms about it, understandably. But of the royal family, there's William and Catherine. They have their home, Anne Hall, which is, I wouldn't say it's that close, but it's less than a mile away. So, they're a bit, they could be worried about the smell themselves. And
they don't live there anymore, do they?
Yeah, that's their holiday home. So they're usually there when the weather's nice. I have to say, I had a rumour that Prince Andrew might be getting their home, Anne Hall. So I put in calls, and sources said no, it's nonsense. But maybe there is some truth in it. Maybe they're happy to hand over their smelly home to Andrew.
Well, quite, Richard Kay. Surely these two stories aren't related. That Andrew might be moving to Sandringham and
a slurry pit suddenly appearing not far away, quite possibly. Of course, it'll be, as Richard says, a very fragrant brand of manure, I'm sure. But it has all sorts of implications, not just for William and Catherine, but when eventually Andrew arrives and packs his bags from Royal Lodge and arrives on the Sandringham estate, will he be in nose-twitching distance of this unpleasant odour? I have to say, I know that part of the world pretty well. It is a very rural part of the countryside. If you live in North Norfolk, you're kind of used to country smells.
Some people like it, don't they? But I mean, what's the benefit though? What is the reason behind this big?
Well, it's just you've got to keep it somewhere. Yeah. So you need a reservoir big enough to.
But presumably, it's very good for fertilising and all of that. Sort of stuff.
It's great. Yeah, everyone is that, but it's one of those things you don't necessarily want to live next door to.
The king turned the royal estate organic some years ago when he took it over from Prince Philip. But the interesting thing is, it won't just be manure created on the royal estate. It'll be a place where manure from all around that part of East Anglia will be collected. So,
well, never let it be said that we don't bring you the glamour on Palace Confidential. Let's go back to William for just a minute, because he's been busy opening the UK's first specialist centre for motor neurone disease care and research in Leeds. MND is also known as ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease, in different parts of the world. Now, Richard Eden, this was a promise that the Prince of Wales made, wasn't it?
Yes, he made it to Rob Burrow before, it was back in 2021, I think, when he went to present CBE to him. And he said, I'd love to open that centre when it's finally ready. Obviously, he died last year, but William was able to make this very poignant visit to open the centre. So he's stuck by his promise, and I think the family and everyone connected to it are very grateful, and they think it's great for publicity and fundraising to try to tackle this horrendous illness.
Oh, it
disease.
really is, isn't it? It was a really moving engagement, wasn't it, Richard Kay? And given the promise that William made to Rob before he died, how does the planning of these sorts of engagements work? Would the centre and the palace have been in contact to sort of like figure out the best possible time in William's diary to open the centre?
Yeah, of course. And I think one thing we've learned about William is that he keeps his promises. There was a real connection between him and Rob Burrow and Rob Burrow's widow and 3 children. And I think when William said, I want to be there to do it, he would have ensured that his staff kept up to speed, kept in touch with the charity, let them know when the building was going to be open. I mean, there will have been a bit of give and take. It was probably at a date to suit William, but nevertheless, it's a sign of how he's prepared to match sort of his promises to action. And I think it's a good thing that he did, and he'll be well appreciated in that whole MND community.
Absolutely.
I think we should just say for viewers who might not know who Rob Burrow is, it was a particularly sort of cruel example of this disease because he was a magnificent rugby league player, and within 2 years of retiring, he came down with this. So it's been horrendous to watch for anyone who loved him as a player.
Indeed. Well, this week William also made an appearance in North Wales, obviously an area close to his heart, where he said something very sweet about his wife, Catherine. What did he say, Richard Eden?
Yes, it was a solo visit back to North Wales, but it's a place that has loads of happy memories for him because he served as a RAF search and rescue pilot at RAF Valley in Anglesey for 3 years, and I think it was a very happy time for him and Catherine. And so he carried out various engagements in North Wales, and at one point a youth leader commented about his own wife. He said, oh, she's a big support, and then William said, yeah, for every average man, there's a much better woman behind him. So that was clearly
I love his rewriting of that old phrase. I love that. Yeah.
That was clearly a reference to, to absent Catherine. So I'm sure she'll appreciate it.
Absolutely. Now, Richard Kay, do you think it's fair to say, I feel like William and Catherine are letting us a little bit more into their relationship in the last sort of like 18 months or so. What have you noticed about them?
I think that's true. I mean, I think it obviously stems from Catherine's illness and how she brought the public, the country, and indeed the world along with her with regular bulletins and updates on how she was coping with her cancer and how she was recovering after treatment. And I think they realised pretty early on that they felt an obligation to keep the public informed about what was happening, and I think it worked very well. I mean, they are the 2 most popular members of the royal family by some distance. Everything they do is always interesting to their followers, and I think there's an acknowledgement that they are a team here, and they want to present themselves as a team, and perhaps discussing things in public in a way that other members of the royal family haven't done in the past has given another element to their appeal.
I wonder as well, I mean, obviously we know that for very understandable reasons, particularly William has grown up feeling very guarded and very protective of his privacy. But I wonder if them letting us in a little bit more and the lovely feedback they've got has made them a bit more relaxed about just
I think there's something in that too. They are slightly more relaxed. They are still extremely guarded about the privacy surrounding their 3 children, and they patrol that. And we know very little about what the 3 do unless it's sort of choreographed and officially released. I think we'd all love to know a little bit more about them, but that's what they're comfortable with. And I think there is a sign that they've suddenly relaxed a bit, and I think that's good.
And speaking of Catherine, she put her head above the parapet this week, didn't she, with some interesting comments on addiction? Yeah,
it's really interesting. I mean, Catherine, for the 2nd week running, has made comments which can be seen as quite controversial. Last week, she was talking to business leaders, urging them to sort of make more time for families and that sort of thing. She's got a bit of criticism for that, on the basis that, that businesses need to concentrate on profit. It's hard for them to make money at the same time as caring for employees, this type of thing. Well, this week she tackled the subject of addiction. It's Addiction Awareness Week, and she wants to make the point that we need to have sympathy for addicts. She was talking about ending the stigma associated with addiction of all kinds. But this has provoked a bit of a backlash from some people that say, you sort of shouldn't end the stigma because it's illegal to take drugs, for example, and that it sort of takes away the agency from individuals who are able to combat drug abuse in the same way.
It's a tricky one, isn't it?
So people say it should be seen differently from a medical problem when you can't do anything about your cancer, but you can do something about your addiction. So, but to me, what it shows is she is prepared now. She's prepared to sort of wade into potentially tricky subjects. We've seen that with her early years stuff, and people have often said in the past, oh, Catherine, she just sticks to sort of bland subjects that no one can object to. But here it shows actually she is prepared to get stuck in.
And King Charles probably was a bit of a trailblazer back in his youth as a Prince of Wales, as sort of like saying things that perhaps people didn't want him to say or think he should. But so maybe this is just a new path for the royal family.
Maybe it is. I mean, as Prince of Wales, he was frequently sticking his head above the parapet, taking on various governments of various stripes over multiple issues, from housing to the army to the environment and conservation. He had no fear of saying what he felt like saying. As king, of course, we know he doesn't adopt that anymore, but I think he'll be slightly thrilled that his daughter-in-law has sort of picked up his mantle.
Interesting. Well, moving on from Catherine and William to another loved-up royal couple, Zara and Mike Tyndall made an appearance at the Beauty Awards in London, which I personally was quite surprised. I thought that's quite a small event, I would have thought, for royals, but it was a rather unconventional date night, wasn't it? Now, Richard Eden, they're famously quite low-key, aren't they, the Tyndalls? But Mike made it clear and he wanted to be at home rather than that red carpet.
Why were you surprised to see Mike Tyndall at the Beauty Awards?
Yeah, I know. I know, it's very odd of me, isn't it? Yeah.
No, but I think he was there, perhaps, a little reluctantly. He said for him, his date night would rather be sort of sitting in front of the TV with a meal and a nice glass of wine.
Can't fault him.
But obviously Zara had wanted to get out. She's been out loads this week, actually. And again, she made some controversial comments. That she went to an engagement with her mother, Princess Anne, it was all about horse welfare. And she talked about how things have become more difficult in that area since Brexit. And as soon as you mention Brexit, that starts to get controversial. So it's been quite an interesting week. But personally, I love to see Zara out with her mother, Princess Anne. I thought it was great. So the more the merrier.
I think the issue with the Tyndalls is they can't decide whether they're royals or they're not royals. They make a big deal about the fact that they don't do royal engagements. They stand on their own 2 feet. They own their own livings. They don't have titles. And yet, when it suits them, of course, they do like reminding people that they are, in fact, the nephew and the nephew by marriage and the niece of the king. I mean, it's awfully good for business.
Nice. That's controversial, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, they've got to make their own living. That's true. But then people, when we see them at events, me as a social diarist, what will we be asking about? It's going to be sort of, are you looking forward to Christmas with the royal family or whatever? So you could argue they're just sort of being polite and answering our tricky questions.
Well, I think it's good of it. She did confirm, didn't she, that she'd be at Sandringham with the rest of the royal family for Christmas, excluding Mr. Mountbatten Windsor and Fergie, of course. But she said that Christmas is always amazing and the place looks amazing. You must have some insight into what the royals get up to on the 25th.
Oh, it's a huge celebration. I mean, whether it's quite the same as it was under the late Queen Elizabeth, I'm not entirely sure, but it is an important date in the royal calendar. Not quite the whole family, but a very large part of them gather up in Norfolk. They follow very different traditions from the majority of our population, the British population, because they open their presents on Christmas Eve, which is the German tradition. There's an awful lot of dressing up, and by dressing up I mean formal and informal clothes that they have to shrug into for dinners, for walks to the church where they're photographed on Christmas morning, for shooting parties which happen on Boxing Day. It's a full-on, but mainly child-centric event. I mean, the Queen loved Christmas. She always did the finishing touches to the Christmas tree. She put the last decoration on Christmas Eve. She admired it, and we know that she took charge of how all the presents were opened and arranged under the tree. In fact, on side tables alongside it.
And where are the royal family? Are they all sitting around the box at 3 p.m. watching the speech?
They are.
Yeah.
They finish lunch. It's usually a 2-hour lunch, just in time to go and watch the King give his address to the Commonwealth. And it's
Do you think the King watches it?
Yes, I do.
I love that. I love that the King watches the King's speech.
Yeah. Don't you watch Palace Confidential?
Of course. No, I don't know. I actually don't, because I can't stand the sound of my voice. But yeah. There will be a Palace Confidential episode on Christmas Day, if anyone's interested. Once you've watched the King's speech, of course. But, I mean, that all sounds very jolly to me, but Richard Eden, Prince Harry, in his book Spare, didn't have that many great things to say about a Sandringham Christmas, did he?
Can you imagine, you think back to Prince Harry's conversations with his ghostwriter, who actually did all the hard work writing his memoirs, because he must have got bored from all the whining, mustn't he? Can you imagine? So even things like trips to Balmoral or Sandringham, the complaints from Harry usually were which room he was going to be assigned. He talked about how Balmoral he ended up in some tiny little room near the servants. I can't remember what his particular complaints about Sandringham were, because there are so many. But
I can tell you.
Can you remember? What was it?
It was about the room that he was.
It's always
given.
the room, isn't it?
I mean,
and this is a key part of royal one-upmanship. I remember when the Prince of Wales was separated and not yet divorced from Princess Diana, no Camilla officially on the scene. At Sandringham, the rooms that he used to share with Diana were given to his younger brother, Prince Edward, and his wife. And Charles had no dressing room, and that was a source of great resentment to him. Maybe he's changed all that now as king.
Do you know what it sounds like? It sounds like one of those work conferences that you get put on, and you have to sort of like figure out where you are in the work pecking order from how big your room is compared to everybody else's.
You can read a lot into who counts and who's at the top of the tree in the royal family by looking at which rooms they're assigned at Sandringham.
Harry certainly read a lot into it, and he didn't like what he read. Yeah.
Do you think he's the kind who would like count how many Christmas presents he got compared to everybody else, and like all of that?
Well, no,
like one of my siblings used to do.
Well, no, they do that because they lay out all the presents, you see, on Christmas Eve. They're on long sort of trestle tables, at Sandringham. So you see everyone's pile. So presumably the children have a bigger pile. So Harry would sort of work his way along to find, oh, is that mine?
Oh, poor Harry. How he suffered on Christmas. Well, you don't have to suffer, because there is no rest for Palace Confidential, because like I mentioned, we will be covering all things royal over Christmas. So make sure you stick with us into December and beyond. I can't believe 2026 is poking around the corner. But I think it's time for some comments now, and let's stick with the festive theme with this question from Nikki Gupta, who said, "Love your show in all the clothes. I have a question about Christmas at Sandringham. Why can't Andrew Mountbatten Windsor join his family for their private Christmas they celebrate together, but not go to St Mary Magdalene Church?" Now, that is an interesting point, isn't it, Richard Kay? Because would people be upset by his mere presence at any part of Christmas? Or?
Well, some people would be upset. These are the people who feel he should effectively be beheaded, if you like, because
that's a bit extreme.
I mean, I haven't had that thought. Yeah.
And removed from any aspect of the royal family. But he is family.
Yeah.
He is family, and if nobody sees him, then who can complain? Why can't he be a guest at Sandringham? Skip the traditional walk to church. They've got a chapel at Sandringham House. He could say his devotions there if he wanted to. But I agree with our correspondent. I think he should be allowed to go.
But do you think that there's an element, I mean, we certainly know it's true with William, but certain factions are so cross with him that they might not want him there anyway?
Well, that again is part of it, and we don't know for sure how deep the resentment runs within the family. I know that his siblings, maybe the king aside, but Princess Anne and Prince Edward, do feel that he has been heavily punished for something which he has actually denied doing. But anyway, that's another story. And I think there would be some some pushback if he was excluded from family gatherings.
Well, it's going to be interesting going forward, isn't it? Because there's such a fine line with the royal family between a family event and a public royal event. So how are they going to police this idea of which weddings and funerals and things that he gets to go to?
I think that's a really tricky area. I mean, I think we would not expect to see him at a funeral like that of the Duchess of Kent again, where she was a cousin of the royal family, slightly distant from him. There was no absolute need for him to be there. And I can see in the future he won't attend those. But if it was a funeral or a wedding or a christening for someone much, much closer to him, then he's well within his rights, as far as I can see, to attend.
Well, last week we spoke about Richard Eden's story that Prince Harry would be speaking as an expert at a real estate conference in Toronto. And I was not shocked, for one, to find that this riled up quite a few people in the comments, including a few actual Canadian real estate agents. Eugenia Evans wrote to us and said, "I'm a realtor in Toronto and I'm absolutely appalled that we are spending money to have Harry give us a speech on leadership. It's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous, and I will not be attending." Equally as passionate, Claudia Molina said, "Toronto resident here, our real estate market is all over the place right now. People are pushing for more affordable housing, but at the same time, a lot of condo owners are losing serious money and most residents still can't afford to buy. It's a really complicated issue, and honestly, I don't know how Harry is supposed to understand all of this, let alone talk to real estate agents about it. What's he even going to say?" I'm interested in that. The conference, which people have paid £270 each to attend, will take place on Monday, December the 1st, so we will keep an eye out for that. I look forward to hearing Harry's
And
wisdom.
I should say tickets are still available.
Tickets are still available. Come on, help Harry earn that fee. Richard Eden also put out a Reading the Royals episode earlier this week about the eerie similarities between Meghan Markle and Wallis Simpson. Now, for those of you lucky enough to watch it as it was broadcast live, you would have been graced with the presence of Richard himself in the chat. Richard Eden, how did you find talking to the viewers in real time?
Yeah, it was really fun. So people could make comments while the programme was being broadcast.
Were they nice to you?
I could respond. Generally they were, yes.
Good.
Some of them were quite sort of spicy, so I didn't necessarily respond to those ones. But generally it was just really fun. I mean, the great thing about Palace Confidential and our sort of YouTube channel is that there is a real sense of community. You know, people, they always leave comments. You often see the same sort of names. People watch the programmes as soon as they're up, and I love that. So it was really fun, actually, to communicate with people.
And I can't believe just how global we've become.
Well, I think that's a reflection of the royal family, that, you know, all over the sort of English-speaking world, people are interested, but also in foreign countries. There's a lot of interest, as we know, genuinely all over the world. So I love hearing about all these different places.
Wow, our Rebecca got recognised in Brazil.
Brazil, yeah.
Incredible. Well, and Palace Confidential viewers seem to enjoy it just as much, with British Best Napa Valley calling it the best commentary on Meghan Markle to date. High praise, Richard Eden. That episode will play directly after this if you missed it. Last week, we also highlighted the lack of coverage of Prince Edward's tour of Nigeria, which seemed to resonate with a lot of you, including Kate Ebel, who said, "I'd like to know if Prince Edward got to meet the Vice President of Nigeria, who hosted the Sussexes so grandly on their trip. She seemed to be excited about meeting royals, and here was a real one." It's a really good point, isn't it? Edward was pictured with the President of Nigeria and other senior politicians, but our team didn't see him with the Vice President. If any of our viewers did, please do let us know. We also had this comment from Stella James, who said, "It was so interesting to see how much the Duke of Edinburgh looks so much like his mother. I don't think I'd ever noticed it until I saw his pictures from Nigeria." Well, let's put this to the test. Here's Prince Edward next to a picture of the late Queen Elizabeth II. And Naomi Peveril also pointed out, as he gets older, Prince Edward looks more and more like his grandfather, King George VI. Anyone else agree? To keep things fair, here is the same picture of Prince Edward next to King George VI. So who do you think Edward looks most like, Queen Elizabeth or King George? Or maybe you think he looks like someone else entirely. Whatever the case, do let us know in the comments below. Well, let's move on to a topic that keeps you talking in our comment section. A certain Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. God, it's going to take some getting used to just saying it, isn't it? The royal, formerly known as Prince Andrew, the former Duke has come under pressure from British Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer to testify in the US over his links to Jeffrey Epstein. Now, Richard Eden, the Prime Minister can say all he wants, but there's no chance Andrew's going to do that, is there?
No, it's interesting. So Sir Keir Starmer made comments that he believes he didn't address Prince Andrew Mountbatten Windsor directly, but talked in general terms that he thinks if people have got evidence, if they know something that could be useful as a witness, they should always provide that. So, he would urge him to go to the United States to give evidence. You should bear in mind that Keir Starmer is a former lawyer. He was a director of public prosecutions. So it is kind of what you'd expect him to say. But, I don't know, it sort of left you with the impression that maybe the King didn't actually mind the Prime Minister, urging his brother to address well, it's to politicians, isn't it?
Yes,
in
well,
America.
the King doesn't want to say it, does he?
No,
yeah.
But it's a very interesting question. And let's be honest, if the King wanted him to go, he could put a lot of pressure on him. I mean, he is now funding Andrew's life. He is hosting him at his estate at Sandringham and will be giving him money for the rest of his life. So
it's a false hope, but I think the royal family would really hope that everyone stopped talking about this whole thing. It's just not going to happen.
Well, it's just after the disaster when he was interviewed before by the BBC, when, as we know, he told lies, that the last thing anyone would want from the royal family would be for Prince Andrew to go and, potentially tell lies to Americans.
Well, indeed. Now, Richard Kay, we haven't seen you on the show for a couple of weeks, so we'd love to hear your take on this whole Andrew saga. Do you think he's been punished enough?
Personally, I think he has been punished enough. I was quite astounded when the King went that extra mile and stripped him of his title that he was born with, the one that's in his passport, i.e. Prince. It's like having Richard and me having Mr. removed from our names. And I don't know whether that was entirely necessary. There was huge public demand for some kind of a reckoning for Andrew, and that was what they came up with. I mean, you mentioned about the possibility of him going to the United States. He was asked 4 or 5 years ago to go and talk to the FBI and prosecutors in New York City. He politely declined that. This time it's congressmen in Washington who would like to hear from him. He turned it down then. I'm pretty certain he'll turn it down now. What pressure could the King put on him that Richard makes? Well, yes, he could put pressure on him. But also, I think at the back of his mind, the King will be wondering, well, what on earth might he say?
Yeah.
More than anything, they would like Andrew not to be seen again, ever. And certainly not to be heard from. Well, in fact, Andrew hasn't said anything publicly for a very long time, but there's been a lot of noise all around him.
I think a lot of people will be interested that yesterday his name was officially changed on the royal family's website, but he still remains in the line of succession, and I can imagine a lot of people will struggle with that, but do you think that will ever change?
Well, I think it might change. I mean, what is he, about number 8, something like that in the line of succession? The idea of him being the heir to the throne is pretty remote, but, something could happen, we're unforeseen tragedy. But the problem is, removing him from the line of succession is not as simple as it was for him to be stripped of his Duke of York title and Prince title. It takes some kind of legislation through the British Houses of Parliament. And the royals have made this big thing about not wanting to take up time for legislators dealing with the intimate details about members of the royal family. So they kind of want to push it to one side. And I don't think there's any great sign from the government or indeed from British members of Parliament who want to do this either.
Well, there's a possible other new front brewing in the storm, because we've heard rumours that Sarah Ferguson is considering several 6-figure offers from US broadcasters offering her a tell-all interview. Now, Richard Eden, Fergie's done Oprah twice before, 1996, 2011. Do you think Oprah might be her go-to again?
I think if she was to give an interview, certainly Oprah would, be a likely candidate. But whether she will or not, I don't know, it's so difficult, isn't it? Because the problem with Sarah is she misled people, with her comments.
This is the thing, we know now that she's quite happy to lie.
She misled people when she said that she wouldn't have anything to do with Epstein, and then she was emailing him, was it 3 weeks later, sucking up to him. So that's the problem. So if she gives an interview, will she tell the truth? And what will she say? I don't know, it's a tricky one. I mean, generally, we've seen what happened with Prince Andrew and his disastrous interview. I can't see any interview that Fergie gives being good for anyone, really.
Do you think, is it true that she's considering this? Because you would think that she would look at the fallout from Harry and Meghan's Oprah interview, and certainly from Andrew's Newsnight interview, and have pause, but...
Well, I think it's certainly true that she's received offers, and whether she's considering them, I'm not sure. I think she'd want more than 6 figures. I think she'd want 7 figures. The question leads on to whether she would write a third memoir.
Right.
She's already written 2 autobiographies, and both were financially successful. So she's got a track record. But what more can she say? Would it be a sort of I want to clear my name type of business, or would it be I'm going to trash and burn the monarchy, I'm going to reveal all the secrets I've got, which of course she didn't put into either of those earlier books.
I wonder as well if the public would be keen to financially support a tell-all memoir.
I think there would be enough curious people, not just here, but around the world. And she always had a lot of fans in the United States. We used to call her the Duchess of New York because of the amount of time she spent on the East Coast. And they were very forgiving. They gave her the opportunity. It was there that she became an ambassador for Weight Watchers, and it's where she sort of, on previous occasions, has got her life back together again. But I feel this time it's too late and too much has happened.
But it's interesting, isn't it? Because basically every source of livelihood has been shut down. So how else is she going to make money?
I mean, the thing is with Sarah, and Andrew, is they have always been very loyal in terms of what they've said. Sarah has given lots of interviews, but she's never said anything negative about the royal family. Quite the opposite. She's always gone out of her way to sing Andrew's praises and say how much she, adored Queen Elizabeth. So I think it would be very difficult for her then to sort of criticise the royal family. I don't think she wouldn't want to do that.
But it might be, she might be in a corner. I'm just trying to think, how else can she make money at this point?
Well, I think if she gave an interview, she would just want to defend Andrew and herself. And I don't think that's not going to go down very well, is it really? She can go and say how wonderful Andrew is, as she has said lots of times, but... who wants to hear that?
Well, we don't have 7 figures, but I'm sure we'd have Fergie on to hear her side of things anytime you want to come on, Sarah. So, yeah, what do you think?
You're very welcome.
Yeah, indeed. That would be interesting, wouldn't it? Do you think there's anything the royal family can do, though, Richard Eden, to stop her if she wants to do a tell-all?
Well, there have been sort of quite lurid reports about the palace having some sort of, dossier of, negative information about Andrew and Fergie that, could be released or they could be sort of threatened with almost.
Who's keeping this dossier?
Yeah, I don't know, the officials, have... they know
it's like
this
King
and
Charles's
that.
very own burn book.
Yeah, so it would be a sort of quid pro quo that, if you go public and start talking, we'll release these details. But again, I think they'll be very reluctant, Andrew and Sarah would be reluctant to go down that route.
I'd be surprised if they released a sort of a dirty dossier. On a much more likely, it seems to me, would be, don't forget about your daughters.
Yes.
And your daughters' titles and their homes and their position. And she wouldn't want to do anything that might jeopardise them.
Yeah.
And we have seen recently, over recent weeks, how the King wants to support their daughters, with the new royal patronage that was announced for... that was for Princess Beatrice, wasn't it? Outward Bound. And we've seen Eugenie just last week on an engagement for the King's charity.
Yeah.
So, he's really been saying kind of, I think, almost carry on being loyal and we'll look after your daughters. And that's what, it's the daughters who matter most to Andrew and Sarah.
Because if it's true that there's this so-called dossier, that's not a good look for the royal family if they know things that they've sat on, is it?
No, it's not a good look for the royal family. I mean, it's something out of the ark. It's something that you might have heard about in the Tudor days. But as I say, I'd be astonished if they had a dossier on them.
Well, speaking of the princesses, last week we discussed reports that Fergie might move to Portugal to live in Princess Eugenie's £3.6 million home. But now we're hearing of another option, a cattle shed. Richard Eden, is this true, or is this a load of, forgive me, a load of bull?
Well,
there's a lot of manure being discussed today, isn't there?
What is true is that Princess Beatrice and her husband Edo have a home in the Cotswolds. I think it's in Oxfordshire, lovely area of the countryside.
Delightful.
And they've been doing some work, so to convert an old cowshed into a sort of annex, which I think people have sort of said, could be a granny annex. So it's somewhere that Sarah could live if she wanted to. Beyond that, it's complete speculation that they might be wanting it for staff, or who knows what, for guests perhaps. But look, come on, Edo's a property developer anyway.
I was going to say, we call it a shed, it'll be a damn nice shed, won't it? Yeah.
Edo is he deals in upmarket, property development. So do not worry. Sarah or Andrew will not be homeless, and they will have a variety of options, I'm sure.
But where do you think she will end up, Richard Kay?
Well, one thing I know about Sarah is that she's not really a country girl. She's a Mayfair girl. And she has also a lot of very rich friends who have stuck by her through thin and thinner, as we might say, over many years. And I think it's quite possible that some of them, without naming any names, might come forward and be helping her out. Yes, a granny flat will be very nice so she can see more of her grandchildren, but I don't think she'll be living there permanently.
Okay, well, to more royals who rely on wealthy friends. God, wealthy friends, that must be nice, right? I'm talking about Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, who Alison Boshoff revealed in the Daily Mail at the weekend have found a wealthy patron who helpfully lets them have a free run of her property empire. Oh, Richard Eden, tell us more, because I need to take notes on how to sort of like get into this lifestyle. Well,
certainly this seems to be a woman to know in America. Is I hope I get her name right. I think it's Victoria Jackson, cosmetic queen, has a huge fortune. And it turns out, so Alison Boshoff, who's got brilliant sources, has reported that she has been generously providing Harry and Meghan with all sorts, with use of her home in this brownstone home, beautiful house in New York City.
Well, one of our producers was telling me that the very brownstone in which she was announced so grandly in the Harper's Bazaar.
Yeah, because people were wondering where it was. So that was her house. Apparently she's been providing private jets, which we know Harry and Meghan love, despite their eco-credentials. And also a place in LA, apparently, that they stayed before attending Kris Jenner's party. So she seems to be really generous, great friend of theirs, introduced via Gloria Steinem, the celebrated feminist writer. So she seems to be a great friend to know and has been helping them a lot.
Indeed. Well, Richard Kay, free accommodation, free use of a private jet. What is Victoria getting out of this beautiful relationship?
Well, I think Meghan has been using some of Victoria's products. There have been a few mentions on various Instagram accounts. Victoria Jackson made her fortune, as Richard says, through her cosmetic range and taking it basically onto the QVC channel, and she's made a £1 billion empire out of it. And I think, in certain parts of the world, even an ex officio member of the royal family as a patron of your products is very, very good business.
She has a huge following, so yeah, indeed. Now, Richard Eden, what's this we teased at the top of the show? You've written about Meghan and the people accusing her of scrounging, in inverted commas, a £1,500 dress. What's going on there? Are you causing more mischief?
No, sorry, I must apologise for causing more trouble. Yes, it's been eagle-eyed viewers of the trailer for Meghan's Christmas, or holiday as she calls it, special of With Love Meghan. And in this trailer she was seen wearing, I think, a beautiful green dress. But viewers recognised that dress. They looked back, and 3 years ago she wore it during a photo shoot for the Hollywood Bible magazine Variety.
I'm sorry, who's got the time to piece these things together?
Well, there's
A lot of our viewers.
There's good detective work, you know.
Okay, well
so
done. Yeah.
it is definitely the same dress, and people have wondered, oh, that's interesting. You know, she was obviously given this dress, or you know, people have been asking how she acquired it and kept it. But it turned out, yes, she did keep it. Now, it's caused a bit of a row.
Well, maybe she was given it.
But our lawyers will insist that I make things clear. So Harry and Meghan's spokesman has said that, yes, she was given the dress, and the explanation is quite intriguing. She was given the dress so that it didn't fall into the hands of the public and would then be sort of auctioned off. So it's just easier to give it to her to keep. That's the...
That's rather convoluted, because as a former magazine editor, I can tell you quite often if a celebrity wore something for the cover, the brand was so thrilled they would then just give them the dress. You don't need to make a big deal of it. Yeah.
Yes, although in this case it was Variety, wasn't it? So it was a dress they'd acquired or whatever for the shoot.
Yeah, but it would be the same sort of thing.
So anyway, there seems to be, this has caused people to look back at other dresses which Meghan has worn, and again they came from photo shoots that she had done. And there's been various people it goes back to this thing, you remember that Spotify executive who called them something very rude and talked about how they were sort of grifters. You know, other people have sort of said they're scroungers and this type of thing. And it's an interesting issue because the royal family, it's a tricky one that, you know, if you're given gifts, for example, ladies in the royal family, they could be lent an outfit to wear for something, but they have to give it back.
Yeah.
And, you know, you're not allowed to keep the gifts you're given generally. So it's a sensitive subject.
I wonder if Meghan's got a really good lucrative Vinted account going on the side. She's just sort of like siphoning all this stuff off.
My daughter said everything on Vinted.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
we better check, see if Meghan's doing it too.
Indeed, there's a lead for you, Richard. Now, if you'd like more of Richard's column, we will put a link to it in the description below. But I just want to stay on fashion for a moment, because it wouldn't be Palace without having a quick sock watch. How's you going?
Oh,
what
okay,
today?
Yes, I'm wearing my smart socks.
I think I've seen those before.
Burlingtons.
I think you need to bring up the variety. They're very nice.
Thank you.
Where are they from?
These are corgi socks.
Corgi socks, of course they are.
And it's because we've got a special deal for our viewers.
Yes. What is it? 20% off?
Anything they buy
Palace 20
from that website. Yeah.
Check it out on corgis. And great for Christmas.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, there'll be a link in the description below for you. Oh, now, can you hear that? Yes, indeed, that's right. It's time to celebrate an unsung royal hero of the week, Richard Kay. A rather poignant one, as this is somebody who's no longer with us.
Indeed. Paul Costello, the Irish designer and couturier. You will know his stuff well, I'm sure, Joe.
Yes.
But he dressed the late Princess Diana over about 12 years, I think, from the mid-80s onwards. And some of the outfits are instantly memorable and iconic. That famous photograph of Diana in Hyde Park in a cloudburst at a Pavarotti concert, and she looked sensational with her hair all soaking wet, and she was laughing, and she was wearing a Costello navy blue outfit. Often she took Costello on trips with, when I say she took Costello's clothes on trips around the world, Australia, Nepal and other places. He had a very distinct style, unlike some of the more formal wear that she wore, and the two got along well. I mean, he spoke in the past about visiting her at Kensington Palace to discuss upcoming trips and what he would design for her, and they had a mutually beneficial relationship.
And you say that it sort of like defied convention a little bit in terms of how she wore his things. Do you think that some people weren't happy with that at the time?
Well, possibly, because it was very much based on his Irishness and his Irish roots. And I remember there being some criticism back in the day about, aren't there enough British?
Has not mentioned there, what Paula Frolic has not mentioned, Angela, but what my reporting has been is that it's not just Harry and Meghan, it's also Archie and Lilibet, which is going to cause one hell of a war. What do you make of it? Is this what you're hearing too? And do you think William would be right to take these titles away? A very quick but personal message from me to you to let you know that the best way you can support Dan Wootton Outspoken is to subscribe to my Substack at www.outspoken.live. Substack is a free speech platform that protects me from big tech cancellation and lawfare. Paid annual or monthly subscribers get an extra hour of content with the Royal Uncancelled After Show available every weekday with no advertising whatsoever. You can also message me direct on there. That's www.outspoken.live.
I hear lots of muddles. You know, one person tells me one thing, another something quite differently. So I can't say which way it's going, but I do feel that actually having done it once with Andrew, you can do it again with Harry and Meghan. I would be delighted if that happened because they have pushed everything beyond the end of the wall because they just try and take people for granted that they're going to let them have what they want in the end, whether it's 24/7 protection or it's just going to be nasty like that. And Meghan's actually threatened that she's going to take out some sort of terrible thing if it does happen, that she won't allow that to happen. But we'll see what the fight is when it gets going. But they have pushed themselves so far. They have behaved so badly. They still are. And they're taking what happens within the royal family and smashes it because they want to win, especially Meghan. And she's drawn out of Harry all this nastiness that he does exactly the same. And we can't have him going round. We can't have him going round to somewhere where William is going round and he sort of rushes to be there first. So he looks good. And he then says to his father, look, I can be really helpful. In Canada, he said, didn't he, just a few weeks ago. So he's just playing. It's just playing. And Meghan just thinks she's too wonderful to be left out of it. And she will win because she'll go to court if she doesn't keeps her title. I don't know, it's very hard. It's very hard to lose your title. But I do really hope that it's taken away. I mean, she's complained for over 6 years now. What a terrible time she had. She was nearly wanted to kill herself. She didn't want to live. Then what trying to get back in there somewhere. Nobody wants her. She's not going to listen to anything she's been told. And so let them live together anywhere they like, do what they like. As for their children, I think it's too terrible that we haven't seen their faces, not because I want to see what they're like, but these little kids must think very strangely of why they can't turn round when they're having their photos taken. They can't understand if they've got a family. They've got no idea if they've got a family except Grandma and Meghan's mother. Otherwise, they haven't. So you can't really put them into the Buckingham Palace and say, look, if you feel like doing any work, do it. And if you don't, because that's not going to be a way that Harry doesn't mind that, which is extraordinary. But it's not a way to do that. And I think if they're going to school and you leave them there with a title, Prince and Princess, they're going to get bullied. They're not going to children say, oh, really? They're going to get bullied. That's how children work, because why are they? They're not. And if she wants to do anything politically in America, which is on and off with her, isn't it? She can't do it with the title. So what's she worried about? Just drop out, but she won't because she's so determined to get her own back. And that it needs someone strong like William who's going to absolutely push it through.
I absolutely agree. I mean, a couple of things to pick up on there, I guess, Angela. The first thing is that these children are being raised in some type of freak show. It's like they are Michael Jackson's children who were paraded to the world but covered up in masks. Yeah, but then remember, he covered their identities and their faces in masks. So of course they're very likely to be messed up, growing up with such messed up parents who are using them in such a mucked up manner. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say on the titles is that I think what Prince William is acutely aware of, and this has certainly been my reporting, is that look at what happened when you allowed Fergie and Andrew to run rampant for so many years, chasing the cash while still sort of being pseudo members of the royal family. I mean, Andrew was an actual member of the royal family, but you'll remember the revelations in terms of Fergie trying to sell access to him, exposed by Maz Mahmood at the News of the World, the fake sheikh. So I think William is acutely aware that even if Harry and Meghan right now are earning their own money, that well is drying up. You've got to take the ability for them to damage the royal family in the future away, and you've got to do that now. You've got to do it swiftly. What's interesting, of course, is that the view is that by taking the titles away from Beatrice and Eugenie as well, he won't be making such a personal point to Harry and Meghan, Archie and Lily, even though he is. It's him saying, look, if you are not a full-time working member of the royal family, you don't need these titles. Just like Zara Tindall doesn't have one of these titles, for example.
Yeah, I agree with that. Zara does fine. She doesn't mind in the least. But I do think it's very difficult to have something torn away from you when your father and mother have behaved badly. And also, William is very fond of the two girls. They've helped out when they've had parties, or lots of people have been there and sort of like nurses, and they go around chatting and being very nice. I think it's very hard then. If you don't get it from the beginning, you're okay. But if you have it taken away from you, I think it's very, very harsh. And maybe he'd slightly think better of that. I have heard, though, that apparently they will be invited to the Christmas party, the two girls, Beatrice and Eugenie, they will be invited to that, whereas their parents won't. That's embarrassing, isn't it? I think it's the right thing to do, because you can't actually punish children because their parents are so badly behaved, can you?
No, but it's very sad for them, because they have to make that almost impossible choice on Christmas Day. Do they make the decision to be with the royal family, which is obviously something they believe in very strongly, and be with their relatives, or be with their parents, who they do love, but
their
have had a
parents
very
might not be
difficult time.
together either,
No.
might they?
No, maybe not anymore. Angela, King Charles is coming in for a lot of criticism, though. A lot of focus saying that amidst his health battle, and we know how serious his cancer now is, he has not really handled his reign in the most appropriate manner. And this new reporting from Radar Online suggests that he's actually now so in his shell, he only really listens to Camilla, to Queen Camilla. So let me take you through their reporting, Andrew, and then, of course, I'll get your reaction as Queen Camilla's biographer. Radar Online reports King Charles is doomed to remain pig-headed and stubborn to the end, as only one member of the family is capable of challenging him on any of his decisions. A senior household source told Radar Online the dynamic is well understood inside palace walls. They claimed His Majesty is set in his ways, often to the point of stubbornness. If anyone is going to push back, it's the Queen, as in Queen Camilla. She's the only one he listens to when he digs his heels in. It goes for everything from his cancer treatments to his treatment of his sons and wider family. Another long-time aide echoed the view, saying Charles has a deep sense of certainty about how things should be done. It can come across as pig-headed. Camilla is the only voice that can consistently pierce that armor. So, Angela, I mean, firstly, is it fair to describe King Charles at the moment as pig-headed and stubborn in terms of the decisions that he's making? And secondly, as someone who, you know, has spent all that time following Camilla and her influence, is it true that really now she is the only one who can get Charles to see sense on particular issues?
Well, the first one, I think he's a marvelous man. I really do. I spent a year with him, and I went round to all these things that he was talking to young people, and he actually really, really cares that young people actually can find something that they can work on and they can do very well. I had dinner there, and the guys there just started learning how to be waiters. And they looked very ill, and they'd been sleeping on the street, and there they were serving me and other people with dinner. And the reason was King Charles told me that I feel that they might want to do something, but if they really want to do it, they have to absolutely do it properly. Now, it's very hard to get a job to do anything that you want to, because it's difficult if you haven't had experience. So I always give them a year's experience in one of the houses, and so that they've got every chance to go ahead. And I thought that was wonderful. I'd never heard anybody say that, and I thought it was a wonderful meaning of his. I think he cares very much. He's going everywhere. He's booking to go to America in the middle of next year too. So he can't be that ill, otherwise I don't think it would be mentioned. But with with Camilla, she has very strict rules for herself. He did listen to her right at the beginning, actually, when someone says, you know, you've got to show her, you've got to take her out, you can't keep her hiding. And he listened to that, and he stopped arguing with people when they have meetings because of her. But she doesn't interfere. She doesn't actually tell him how he should be as a king. She actually looks after him and tells him that he might feel not so well, or could he have an early rest. She told me she took all her things that she was going to do from Prince Philip, who she watched very carefully. And she felt he was just right. He walked just behind the Queen, and she never pushes herself ahead of him. And she would always let him deal with the work, with the country, with all that. And what she would do would be to look after him as a human being. So that's what I know about that. I can go on a bit longer, but you probably got no time.
No, it's fascinating. It really is fascinating. And of course, you know, Catherine obviously views her primary role as well as being there to support William. And I think it's very, very different to how Meghan views her role, for example.
It doesn't, yeah, exactly. Harry does everything for Meghan, but Camilla watches her husband, and she actually does anything she thinks he needs for him. She doesn't do it for her. She fits in, and she thinks it's very wrong for someone to tell him what to do when he's been in this work for a very long time and waited a very long time while his mother was doing it. And she has nothing to do with that. She won't get involved in that at all, even when sometimes the A's come up and say, look, he's in a bit of a mood, do you think you can help? Well, she waits, you know, she doesn't just say, of course, and go stomping in and tells him, stop that nonsense now. You know, she's there she loves him to bits, and she's there to give him warmth and support, not for her to take over.
But first, quick word on something I rely on every single day: Surfshark. In a world where governments, big tech, and opportunist hackers are all vying for your data, keeping your browsing private isn't optional, it's essential. And here in the UK, we've even seen sites, and reporting some of our own, at Outspoken, pushed behind the Online Safety Act. So that's why I use Surfshark VPN. It shields what I do online, helps me steer clear of censorship, and lets me access the content I pay for wherever I am, even when I'm traveling and want to catch up on shows or sport that don't appear in